Alright guys, Murph's here, and today we're going to be talking about bedside guns. Now before we get too far into this, I want to go ahead and throw out a little bit of a disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. I am not a firearms instructor. I'm not a tactical guru. I'm just some dude with opinions who has spent a lot of time and money and effort, thought, research, all that stuff to come up with what it is that I do and why it is that I do it. So whatever it is that I'm telling you probably doesn't apply to whatever state or country that you live in. You're going to have to take this information that I'm putting out, apply it to yourself, figure out what you do and don't like, test it a little bit on the range, and then make an informed decision from there. That's all I'm trying to do, is just supply data that I have used my time and money to put together for you. All right? Now, that being the case, let's talk about bedside guns. Now, what is my definition of a bedside gun? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's a gun at my bedside. For me, it's a handgun. Now, why is it a handgun and not a long gun, Murph? Why are you doing that? Well, a couple of reasons. First off, I keep a ready rack in the bedroom that has rifles and shotguns on it. But that is not at my bedside. And it all comes to a question of accessibility. Now, for my setup, for my home defense arrangement, I foresee three possibilities that will require me to have to use a handgun for home defense. The first one is somebody has made it all the way through the house to my bedroom door without me knowing about it until they got there. So now the threat is entirely too close for comfort and I have to handle it right here, right now. Now you might say, well, you can do that with a rifle or shotgun. But I would question how well you could handle a rifle or shotgun from your back. Now, this is maybe not the best example of what to do this with. An AR-15 being light recoiling and a fairly handy weapon system, it's actually not a bad choice to try to shoot from unusual shooting positions, like on your back. Your feet might be a little bit concerned, but you could pull this off. It's just kind of what I had lying around super handy to grab up for this video. But this is still not my preferred. Now someone else might say, well, what about a shotgun? A shotgun would most definitely not be my preferred to do so, to engage with from my back. Now, everyone else is saying, well, why don't you just sit up and engage that way? You know, and then you can absorb the recoil and all this kind of stuff. And what I say to that is, we're already in the worst case scenario. This person is way too close to begin with, and we need to start sorting things out right now. And that's going to be done with a weapon, most likely. If you're in my house, you got that far, and I probably didn't want you to be there in the first place, we're sorting it out real fast. In order for me to grab a long arm, I have to channel this weapon into my hands. And that is multiple manipulations of the weapon system before I'm even trying to get it on target and start manipulating the actual features of the gun, lights, safeties, all that kind of stuff. Now you also want me to sit up. Now these seem like really small, not very time consuming actions by themselves, and they really aren't. However, when you combine them all together, that's where time comes from. And that's not worth it to me when I can just grab a handgun and punch out with both hands, extend one and engage that way. I have so many more options out of a handgun in a confined space than I do out of a rifle, right off the bat. Now, option two. Let's say something goes bump in the night. Now, both of these options are frustrated by the fact that I have an alarm system and a dog. So in the first case, the only way you're going to get into the house and get that far is if I forget to turn the alarm on and I leave the door wide open. It's the only way you're going to get that far. So this is the worst case but least likely possibility. Now in the second case, this is actually what I wind up doing the vast majority of my time, or dealing with the vast majority of my time, but never actually occurs, which is something goes bump in the night. So now this means that you once again bypass the alarm and the dog, and in this case, unless the door is left wide open, even if you open a door or a window or whatever, the alarm still lets me know. It may not sound the alarm and warn the police, but there's still a beeping noise whenever one of those spaces is open, one of those entry points is open. So in theory, I should still know about it, even if I forget to turn the alarm on. So now this person has managed to bypass those things and the dog and is now in the house, and they accidentally, I don't know, bumped into something. This, of course, has never happened to me. What it always winds up being is that, you know, the house creaked or the the dishes in the sink shifted, and now I have to get up and do my manly duties and make sure that Aragog is not crawling across the ceiling to consume us in our sleep. And I prefer to do that with a handgun. Now, once again, someone may ask, why not a long gun? Why not a shotgun? Why are you choosing to use a handgun? And the vast majority of the time, as I think I've mentioned before, if I'm going to fight with somebody, I would prefer to use a long gun for a whole variety of reasons we're not going to get into right now. But in my house, with how it is set up, there are a lot of very tight corners that I have to clear. A lot of very tight spaces that I have to work in. A long gun is not practical if I'm investigating something in the house. Now, you might remember just a little bit ago, literally less than 5 minutes ago, I said that I had a ready rack of long guns in my bedroom. What are those for then? So those are somebody tries to get in the house and the alarm goes off. And I use those, my plan, this is what I've come up with in my mind, is that I'm going to cover the bedroom door with that long gun while I contact the police to make sure the cavalry's on the way. And hopefully that person takes the hint and gets out of there. That's why I have the long guns. Now, the handgun is for actually going through and clearing those spaces and, you know, figuring out where the werewolf that snuck into the house is at. The third option is the one that I see a lot in the news and has actually happened quite a bit in the town that I live in, where there is a knock at the door either super late at night or really early in the morning. And it's either someone trying to make a delivery at that time and then force their way into the home, or a lot of times it's somebody tries to cajole or otherwise force their way into the house. Another situation that I've seen on the news a couple of times would be that a spouse is fleeing an assault of some type and they go to a neighbor's house and now they're begging for help and something like that. And those are real situations that happens every day. So with that option, once again, I choose the handgun. I'm up and moving around. I'm having to check tight corners and all that kind of stuff. And then when I get to the door, I may need my hands free. Now, once again, with a long arm, I could sling the weapon system or something like that and have it hanging across my body. However, that is kind of obtrusive and potentially off-putting to whoever's on the other side of the door if it just winds up being a lost Girl Scout or something like that. A handgun allows me to, in some way, secure the weapon system still on my body to make my hands free, say if I have to render aid to somebody or if I need to appear non-threatening for some reason, while still being able to be threatening or lethal if I need to be. So that's kind of what drives those decisions there. Now, over the years, I've had a lot of different guns on my bedside, and I limited the list to guns that spent multiple months there. There's a lot of times where I was evolving new concepts in my mind, I was getting new ammunition, I was buying new guns, as my collection grew and all that kind of stuff, and I was trying out different guns on the bedside. And a couple have stuck around or stood out over the years. So the very first one that I ever used as a bedside gun was this Browning HiPower in 9mm. So this has probably spent the most amount of time on my bedside, has done so over the years. And the reason that I first selected this gun was because it was my biggest gun. It had the longest grip and the most sight radius. So it wasn't a gun that I was looking necessarily to carry concealed as much as it was something that I was looking to now be able to use as a fighting gun. So, worst case scenarios, end of the world, John Wick type moments playing out in my head and all that kind of stuff, or just defend my home, defend my fledgling family. This was the gun that I initially went to. And I did this for a really long time, like I said before, until I started really questioning the viability of handgun calibers for home defense. So this is like pre-having a ready rack and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really keep a long arm handy. I just totally relied on a handgun. Until I really started looking at the data on kind of the inefficiency or the lack of capability in handgun cartridges. So it was about that time that I got myself a new handgun. This guy. A Ruger Security 6 in .357 Magnum. When I got this, I was like, there we go. Now I've solved all of my handgun cartridge problems because I've got 6 rounds of 357 Magnum on board. I've got so much energy. I've got so much velocity, so much mass that I'm moving around with this gun. There's just, the gunfight's going to be over before it even started. I'm going to wreck some, whatever poor person finds himself on the receiving end of this, I'm just going to wreck them, and it's going to be good and done. And the great thing is, it's got the cylinder, right? So there's no springs to worry about in a magazine. It's not going to stress out, and I'm going to potentially have, a failure in the gun when I need it most. It's a revolver, baby. They never fail, which is not true, but it's a story for another time. However, this made a lot of sense. So I could keep it loaded indefinitely. Everything was going to be hunky-dory, peachy keen. I also used this as a woods gun. So I would keep this loaded with 158 grain soft points. And everything was going really well until I had a new revelation. And that was that 158 grain, or soft points in general, are preferred for use on animals because they penetrate more deeply while mushrooming more slowly. So that's great if you have to shoot through, an animal's hair and their fatty deposits and the thick muscle and all that kind of stuff. Like, you want a bullet that's going to penetrate really deeply. However, you may not want that if it's some 100-pound crackhead that's broken into your house, potentially threatening your life. And I suddenly came to the realization that if I shot said 100-pound crackhead, there was a very good possibility that that bullet was still going to have enough energy to pass through him, the exterior wall of my home, into the exterior wall of my neighbor's house and kill the little Timmy next door. So at that point, I was like, maybe 357 Magnum's not the best point, not the best choice. Maybe I should rethink my life. And I did. So that's when I moved over to a Springfield 1911 A1. Now this is a very much so older gun. I bought it used, or I got it used, and I was like, yeah, 45 ACP. This is a great choice. I'm still upping. I'm still in that kind of major side of caliber and all that kind of stuff. I've got a lot of bullet to throw around, and I point and transition with this gun very naturally. The 1911 is a very naturally pointing, naturally handling pistol, so it's a great choice. This is going to work out great. Now, one of the things that I love about this gun is simultaneously one of the things that I hate about this gun. Now, aside from somebody refinished this with a little bit more gloss, and they put these charming but not exactly GI standard grips on it, this does have the low profile original iron sights that are supposed to come on 1911 pistols. I don't like the newer mil-spec 1911 pistols that have these really tall front and rear sights. They drive me nuts. I really like the low profile, slim, GI look on a 1911. I think that's a really good look. However, they're really difficult to pick up, and they're really difficult to shoot well. And in the dark, when all you see is dark, it's going to be really hard to take out the big bad werewolf there. I mean, it's already going to be an issue because I don't have silver bullets, but not helping anything when I can't even see to put the ones I have on target. That, and then also the original rear sight just fell out of the gun one day, which was distressing to say the least. But I got a new rear sight in it, and until I did, the HiPower was pulling bedside duty. But even after I got this rear sight reinstalled, after really reevaluating how I felt about these sights, I decided not to have it come back onto duty as a bedside gun. And then I had an epiphany that even with the HiPower and its standard 3-dot sights, I still didn't have a night capability. So I was still either going to have to rely on ambient light, an offset flashlight, or guess, which is like the worst possibility that I could have chosen, I needed to change something. Those were my options. I needed to change something. So I did. And that is when I picked up the Sig P226 double action Kellerman. Previously reviewed, it was actually my first video on this channel. So this gun became a savvy choice because it has tritium night sights. and a pick rail. So now I can actually see what it is that I'm lining up, and though I haven't picked one yet, I am eventually going to put a light on this gun. I'm researching right now and deciding and trying to figure out how much I want to spend. I can put a light on this gun, and now I've just completely changed, completely reformed my capability to be able to engage threats at night. Now this gun is far too large for carry, and it's too low of capacity, 12 rounds of 40 Smith & Wesson. It's too low of capacity for a competition gun. And the only other thing I could see me using this for would be to throw it in a truck on a long drive, just to have a more accessible handgun should one be needed. So guys, that's where I sit now, and it's a very good probability that this is not getting changed out anytime soon, because it kind of meets everything that I need it to. It's a larger gun with more grip. It's got a longer sight radius. It's got a at least double stack capacity magazine. I'm throwing still a pistol bullet, but I'm throwing a fairly balanced pistol bullet when it comes to energy and velocity and all that kind of stuff. I've got more rounds on board than I would out of the 1911 or the 357 Magnum revolver. And not as many as I had in the HiPower. The HiPower is the 13+1 capacity. I think I forgot to mention that. 1911, of course, being a 7 or 8 with the possibility of 10-round extendos, but pretty much everyone's running either 7 or 8 rounds in it. So, night sight capability, pick rail, length, everything's right. Everything's how it's supposed to be. So that's where I'm at now. I hope you guys found this video informative. I hope it's given someone an aha moment, or perhaps has helped them to better choose what it is they want to be able to use to defend their lives. That's all I want to do, is just help you guys out. So, have a good day.